have the blackmail. And for about a year, Representative Nancy Mace, a congresswoman from South Carolina, I have been communicating to her social media accounts, messaging directly evidence of the genocide inside of Gaza to make sure that in the future, when she claims she didn't know, because she will have to be put to the test, that you were complicit in these war crimes, she will not be able to claim that, because I will have the evidence that shows that she was given the Amnesty International information, the Human Rights Watch information, Save the Children, the United Nations. She will have all of that. But what recently surfaced about her that she came forward and admitted is that there is video footage of her being assaulted by a male that she claims was her fiance at the time. And it's interesting that she's coming to surface with this now. And what I think is happening is this was the blackmail that they had against her. Then she took a trip this last week to Israel to visit the kibbutz that the Hannibal Directive basically slaughtered these people. There's a video going around of the mother and the two children that were the Israeli captives, of the Hamas fighters trying to get them out of the area as quickly as possible, because they knew that the Israeli planes were coming and were going to kill them. And so in this video, you can see they're trying hastily to get out of that area so that they wouldn't murder these children. And so she went and visited this area, and so surely now she even saw with her own eyes that the Hannibal Directive was carried out, because you can't do that amount of damage. Hamas just didn't have the capabilities to do that amount of damage. That was an Apache owned and operated by the IDF. The evidence is clear. They did this.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I am honored and excited to be joined by my friend Josephine Guilbeau. I say your last name right?
Yes, right? That's right.
She is a former U.S. Army all-source intel analyst. We've been collaborating together on Instagram for many months now, and let me tell you a little bit about her background. Her mobilizations include Operation Enduring Freedom, where she supported cyberspace operations for U.S. Cyber Command and the Cyber National Mission Force, and she also earned an Army Commendation Medal for her vital role in that mission's success. Since her resignation from the military in 2023, Josephine has been advocating for peace in the Middle East, upholding the highest standards of professionalism and leadership. Her dedication to both military duties and her community reflects her incredible sense of commitment to making a positive impact wherever she is serving. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice and is currently pursuing a master's degree in cybersecurity management and policy. Her awards and decorations include 2 Army Commendation Medals and 3 Army Achievement Medals, recognizing her outstanding service and valor in the face of adversity. Josephine, thank you so much for beaming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So I want to play this video, which I will have spliced into the final edit, because the first time I saw you speaking, you were saying this, something that I had been saying and being met with that's not true. And I was like, what world are you living in? But
we have technology that we can see exactly who's in these locations and buildings. So they're targeting and bombing homes, knowing who and how many children were actually inside. My name is Josephine Guilbeau. I'm a 17-year Army veteran. I recently got out of the military last year. Having that background as an intelligence officer and understanding what defense actually is, I can see clearly that this is not self-defense. The civilian casualties is catastrophic. They're targeting homes filled with children. The elite that sit in Capitol Hill sit there and lie over and over and over. I just want to highlight one of the biggest awakenings that I think I've had the last few weeks coming here and lobbying with the senators and the congressmen is just how corrupt our government is. And that anyone that's in the military is simply just one chess piece that they use at their leisure for their own internal gain to protect their own internal assets and money.
It should be clear now to everyone why Josephine is sitting here with me. What a profound realization you had. And incredibly true, more true than most people will ever know. You know, just how corrupt. And for those of you tuning in, we're going to be discussing the current state of affairs and the ongoing genocide. I refuse to call it anything than what it is in Gaza. And Josephine has been covered in so many major, mostly foreign news agencies through their social media sites. She's accumulated millions of views with her incredibly brave and outspoken approach and confrontational with some of our senators and congressmen, showing up and saying what many of us have been screaming for a long time, but in person. And we'll show some of that footage too before this podcast is up. And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you, my friend.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Seriously. That video was just really, I'd say, a few weeks after I came into the realization of how the corruption exists inside our government. So it was still really fresh.
Yeah. And, you know, like the first part of that video is really what like caught my ear and my eye, because you were saying what I was like, you know, I tell people all the time, the moment I read the October 7th headlines, I fucking almost fell out of my chair laughing. I could not believe that was the story they were going to run with, that they were going to try to sell to the world that Hamas somehow surprise attacked and invaded Israel and successfully maimed, killed, murdered over 1,000 people. I was like, get the fuck, like I couldn't believe it. I was like, everyone's going to be prepared for the absurdity of this, like the notion that this could be true. And of course, I completely overestimated what people understand about modern day intelligence
and technology.
You know, as usual, I was the only one being like, is anyone else seeing this? This is a farce.
It was a total farce. You know, the Israeli military and the United States military has some of the most,
of course,
advanced technology when it comes to weapon systems, surveillance. I mean, you name it. And to suggest to anyone that has a level of understanding of that they had no idea what was going on, you know, it at first, you know, you're filled with the emotions of the fact that there were people that were, unalived. And of course, that's not ever the answer, violence. But at the same time, when you really start digging into the narrative, you start to break the pieces down and see that this was all a part of their plan to be able to exterminate these people because they cannot control them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we now know for a fact that the Hannibal Directive was put into play.
Absolutely. That
Israel knew a full year in advance. Of course, Israel had to know, because Israel had to coordinate and allow Hamas to come into, you know, at least a couple $1 billion worth of fucking weapons that they could get away with sending off. So, of course, the United States knew, you know, Israel had to know because they had to help orchestrate it. Just like the United States fucking government orchestrated 9/11. You know, you can't pull something off to that degree unless it's an inside job.
Unless it's all collaborated.
That's right.
Just like what happened with the fall of Assad. How the pieces move so quickly within 1 week between Turkey, Syria, Russia, Assad, Iran, the United States, and Israel, they all sat at a table together and coordinated what was going to happen. Because it moved too flawlessly. It was just like back to back. These operations were occurring. Israel was moving in. Assad was moving out. Everything just happened so flawlessly within just such a short period of time that was coordinated. Absolutely coordinated.
No, absolutely. You know, and so once you start to see the patterns, then they become impossible to ignore.
Yes.
You know? But you know, you've worked on some classified projects, and a lot of intelligence that you worked on is still classified. And I know that, you know, we won't even attempt to wade into the details of that, but you know,
I'd like to stay out of prison for treason.
Yeah, no, I'd like to keep you out of prison. We have enough
espionage. I'd like to stay out of prison. I'd like to. What I think the best thing to do, honestly, is to let people just pique their curiosity, because once someone's curiosity is piqued, they'll find the truth.
Yeah, true. So my question for you is, first and foremost, is are you still active military, or have you left the military? And also, since October 7th, and this, has come to the forefront, you've probably learned and been exposed to a great many other truths that you didn't realize were staring you in the face for a 17-year career in the military and intelligence. And I'd love to hear about those.
Yeah, so I actually got out of the military officially February of 2023. So I did a full resignation. Sorry to the viewers. Can't get prosecuted for that. Yeah. I know how so many people want to, but no court martial, no UCMJ can happen to me. It's all legal, and all of my activism is defined under freedom of speech. So February 2023. And this reality struck me in the face. I'm going to rewind a little bit of how I even came to know what was happening October 7th. In 2017, I did an assignment with the Defense Intelligence Agency as a defense contractor, working on as an intelligence analyst for litigation and prosecution of detainees in Guantanamo Bay. The level of access that I had there was TS-SCI with a CI polygraph. So that was the level of clearance that you needed in order to work in this space. And what CI polygraph means is just counterintelligence polygraph. And so that's the level of information I was given. This information that I was reading about some of the operations that had occurred overseas shortly after 9/11 is what touched my soul. Yeah. Because I thought something is not right here. How can we as human beings be subject other human beings to this level of torture? And it was when I first started sort of questioning my government. So I started following media outlets from other countries, something that I had not done before. And from India, Ireland, the Middle East, Africa, I just kind of randomly on Facebook searched.
You're like, I need greater perspective.
I wanted the perspective of the people there, right? That was the goal, just to understand what are people saying internationally, because I know what my country's saying. I know what my government's saying. I even know what the intelligence communities are saying. And so I just wanted to know, what are they saying, that, and how can I find the similarities and the differences? Well, since that point, nothing major had really happened except for the pullout of Afghanistan, which was a complete disaster. Thankfully, we were able to, get a lot of civilians here into America, and I was a part of the organizations that were helping these civilians that were coming into
Guantanamo?
No, not Guantanamo. Quantico.
Okay.
They were sort of like.
What's Quantico for?
Quantico is a military base about 30 miles or so south, maybe a little more south of DC. Okay. And that's where they were staging these families in order, like before they were going to go to an apartment, or, they were staging the families here, letting them stay here until they were moving them to the next phase into society. And I met a lot of amazing people that way from Afghanistan. But nothing else had really happened from that point until October 7th. So when I started seeing the footage on the ground from these social media outlets, journalists, media outlets on Facebook, that's when I was like, oh my God, what am I witnessing right now? Because my government, Fox News, CNN, these corrupt politicians were telling us this one narrative, and then the reality on the ground, the footage coming out on the ground was totally different. And it took me several weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't actually decide that I'm going to say something until October 24th.
Wow.
That's how long it took my brain.
Well, you had to be sure, too.
Yes,
you
I
know?
had to be sure, and I needed to, and I had to accept it, because I knew that accepting what I was witnessing and the truth meant that I was opening the door to one of the greatest awakenings of a human being,
Right.
and one of the greatest deprogramming of a human being, because for 17 years, I've been this patriotic American who trusted my institutions, who believed my institutions. And I knew that by accepting that truth, I was also deciding
Scary.
that all of that was a lie.
Yeah.
And everything that I had also been a part of in my career was, in many ways, I was guilty of doing things that were,
Yeah.
inhumane, if you will. And so I knew that opening this door would mean that I was going to have a lot of healing to do myself of, 36 years of programming by my country.
Everybody has a lot of healing to do, my friend. First of all, that's the cold, hard truth that's very difficult for people to face, because they don't understand. They've been programmed, and we've all been programmed. Cut yourself some slack, because it takes a brave heart to stand in the face of something that is completely identity shattering, and I also know that your background is more leans towards the conservative, Christian right, if you will, and in their eyes and in their indoctrination, it's taboo to imagine that Israel is capable of anything but being God's chosen people, as if God has chosen people, as if God does land deals.
Right.
My God. But so I want to commend you, and I take my hat off to you for having the courage to, because most people would then shy away from that. They would then turn away and they would look for evidence to support what they already believe, because we hold on to our identities. You know what I mean? Like, you really got to become a very strong, the spiritual fortitude it takes to go against something you've been really brought to believe is absolutely true and then worked for so long is immense. So,
coincidentally, or is it it might have been a synchronicity along the way.
Yes.
I say coincidental because that's the language most people speak, but synchronicity along the way is that for most of my adult life, I've been studying who Jesus was, because I have such a love for him and what he stood for. And I've found out so much more information about him and his, divine connection to the within and to the without, if you will. And so it almost was as if me coming to understand who Jesus was and the depth of love and authenticity he had helped me to dig into that and channel that to keep going. So like I always tell people, Jesus was a revolutionary. Christians in America have come to believe he was some white man that, whatever they believe.
Yeah.
They even portray him as a white man. Like this past Christmas, I went to try and purchase a nativity set and they're all white people. I was like, Jesus was not white. This is comical.
That would be impossible. Yeah.
It would be impossible. But yeah, so, my Christianity, as much as there are horrible things that have been done in the name of Christianity, I will say that I am thankful that I've been given access to know who Jesus was.
Yeah.
Because it's helped me tremendously in this journey.
You don't need religion to learn who Jesus was.
Yes, absolutely.
But cultural and societal thinking would have you believe otherwise. And they would also have you believe that Jesus somehow needs you to worship him for you to save your soul, which is nonsense, of course. That's not what Jesus ever taught.
Yes, so right. That's absolutely right.
Literally, it's not something that he ever taught, in all his teachings. He never said anything of the sort. He said, you are like me, and do unto others as you would do unto yourself and as you would do unto me. People just look past that and they're like, repent,
Yeah.
repent, sinner, or you will burn in hell. Like, where? Is it going to be worse than Gaza right now? I don't think so.
No, sometimes I feel like the hell that we were told about is the hell on earth that human beings have actually created.
No, it is. You're right. You're right on it. Heaven and hell are right here.
That's right.
I mean, look at this planet. Literally, we were born in heaven. We have everything you could ever want, and there's more than enough for everyone.
Everyone.
And
There's
look at
abundance for everyone.
Absolutely, there is. And all you have to do is open your eyes and look around, to see it. And then when you start to understand the scope of it, and then you can begin to parcel out how much we've been manipulated to believe otherwise, and how many generations it's taken to imbue this human race with a scarcity mindset and a dog-eat-dog understanding, a Darwinistic understanding of our existence and life on this planet. They need you to believe that, so that when you see someone stepping on someone else's neck to get to where they want to be, you're like, that's just nature.
Yes.
That's bullshit. That's not nature. That's what we've been taught.
Yes.
So that we don't say, hey, don't do that. Do you understand? That's the world that they want us to live in. And that's why keeping people living in survival mode in one way or another, whether it be through war, through pandemics, whatever they have to do, inflation, that is part of the way that they control. You can't, the healthier the population, obviously the harder it is to control them. That should go without saying.
Yeah, whenever people start learning that inflation is a strategy,
they're like, what?
they're like,
I don't believe it.
I don't get it. Yeah, it's complicated. It's complex. It's a lot. Honestly, I had to quit my career path. I should probably start leaving out of my bio that I'm pursuing a master's degree in cybersecurity, because I don't know if I'm ever going to work in that industry again, honestly, even though I almost was finished with my master's in it. But, it's a full-time job to know the truth, like to learn the truth. It's full-time job.
That's right.
And not a lot of people have the ability, capacity to do that. And I always try and make sure that I remember that, because I really want to only give people what they are prepared to hear, because I know how hard it is, and, as mothers, we have to remain in a state of like nurturing and loving our children. And if you put too much truth on someone, especially a mother, and, and it goes between her ability to nurture a child, then now what are you doing? Right? Like then now you're causing more problems. So the complexity of the truth is a lot. It's a full-time job. It is. But, bit by bit, I call it ripple by ripple, we'll make a wave that'll wash the truth over society. And, and then we'll, collectively stop being controlled by, I call them the evil doers. I don't even like using the identifiers anymore, like Zionists, Nazis, it's a new year, it's a new identifier, but the reality is it's the same evil.
It's the same people,
it's
literally.
It's the same people, it's the same evil.
Same families.
Yes, same force,
and
absolutely.
Let's also put this out here, we try very actively to not fall into the stereotypical pitfalls of labeling a whole swath of human beings as any one thing.
Yes.
When I tell people all the time, they say, is it the Jews? And I say, no, it's not. It's not. Of course it's not the Jews. There are fucking millions of incredible people of Jewish heritage around the world.
Absolutely.
Many of them don't buy into or believe in Zionism. Many of them have a very real problem with Zionism, because Zionism states that Israel is the base, and the homeland, when that's not what the Torah necessarily has ever taught.
Exactly. Sadly, the current, timeline that we're living, 2025, of this year that we made up also, 2025, they just are abusing the term Jew. Yeah. They're abusing Judaism. Just like 250 plus years ago, they abused Christianity and Catholicism to genocide the Native Americans here in America and Canada. Yeah. It's just another it's another timeline, same tactic, different words.
You know, there's a lot of intelligence that has been written and theories that resonate a lot with me about how these people, in truth, loathe the Jewish community in general, and that's why they use them. That's why they chose to use them in World War II. That's why they chose to use them as a means to create a state of a nation of its own, a warring nation in Palestine. You know, they had all kinds of options. The British were in
Yes.
control of
They did.
all kinds of places, you know. But the Rothschilds, they wanted Palestine, and they wanted it for its biblical significance. They knew that they could make a claim to it. How they were going to leverage that claim, no one probably could have ever foresaw the level of manipulation and deception that they used. But make no mistake about it, both world wars were fought over Palestine. First to establish it, and then to eradicate and expand the nation of Israel. That's what the Second World War was. The first one got them the land, the Balfour Declaration. You know, I mean,
1917.
that's right. And it
Or
literally,
1918.
World War I was over. The Germans had U-boats. No one else had fucking U-boats. They were like, Germans are always ahead. Somehow they're always hiding technology. You know, the Second World War, where they had fucking flying saucers, we were like, what the hell? We need that. We need those things too.
What do you think is so important, if you will, about this location? Have you done any like research into why are they so set on occupying and controlling this specific piece of land?
The way I understand it is the Holy Land, as it's referred to, you know, has been fought over, you know, since the Crusades. And why it's so important is because I think because not only Muhammad, but also Jesus, and you know, you have every Abrahamic religion claiming its roots and source in those lands. It seems to me like they would be the opposite of holy these days, considering the amount of bloodshed and violence that have been. But if you're a god of war, then it's absolutely your holy land, you know. And Yahweh, if you look into the etymology of the word and where it comes from, and it's the way it was sourced, Yahweh was a war god. Yahweh was a god of pillage and war. So you have all these people worshiping, you know, they can worship him as this omnipotent entity all they want. And maybe Yahweh will even try to pretend like that's what it's about. But it's not. It's a god of war. And look at the fucking state of the world. You know, the Abrahamic religions are the most dominant religions, and the most wars have been fought. The most bloodshed has been fought in the name of those religions, which makes perfect sense when you think,
Absolutely.
when you realize Yahweh is actually an entity, probably not just a spiritual entity, but probably a fucking negative ET, you know, Orion-based entity, service to self, who came to teach that to certain members of the human race. And the Rothschilds were one of the first students, you know, divide and conquer, control the money, control the supplies, and then rule, you know. And that's a different understanding of life than Jesus came to teach. You know, they're antithesis to each other, you know.
Yep. So, you know, it's something that I try and wrap my head around, of course, you know, to try and understand the state of the world is in turmoil. The balance of good and evil is certainly out of balance. And it's not just what we're witnessing necessarily that is telling of that. It's the silence.
Yeah.
It's the silence of human beings across our nation, especially. I would say that our nation probably has the most silent people with access to having freedom of speech, because you have other countries in the Middle East who obviously do not support the state of Israel and this ideology that a group of white Europeans can come into a land and like mass slaughter the indigenous people that have been there for thousands of years. But they are being controlled by their government and silenced and censored.
Yeah.
And, you know, the consequences of speaking out there are like horrific. You know, they go to prison and are tortured. And it's by design. CIA Western governments design it that way, provide financial support to these countries like Egypt and Jordan to ensure that they silence their people from uprising. Ultimately, you know, this never actually works. It works in the short term. But I've been trying to wrap my head around this land and what's the significance of it. And, you know, I think I agree with you to a degree that the root of Christianity, Judaism and Islam comes from there.
Yeah.
And, despite the negative things about those religions, there's so many beautiful things about it too. And I think that they're trying to destroy that sort of like root that exists there, because the way that I've even seen the Israelis, the European white men who occupy that land, treat Christians is horrible. The Palestinian,
spitting at them,
the initial Christians, Palestinian Christians are the first Christians.
Yep.
And the
literally.
way that, yes. And
literally the first Christians.
They are literally the first Christians, and they are exterminating them. The Israeli white European men are literally trying to exterminate the original Christians that exist on earth. Why? You really have to start asking yourself that. I hope that your viewers do too. You know, I've been obviously on my own journey trying to figure out, why would you want to eradicate the first Christians?
Well, that's your lineage. That's your direct claim to the land. You know, that goes back. They pose a direct threat. They are the people who inherited the land after Jesus, you know, and they are his blood, more so than the Polish, German, Europeans who created, settled, and waged 2 world wars for a nation of their own.
Absolutely.
To call Israel, and then forced and manipulated governments around the world to force Jewish people to immigrate to the middle of the fucking desert, you know, in the Middle East. And that's what they did. And to a degree that this world is almost completely ignorant to how that happened, how that went down. You know, I tell people all the time, I can't talk about it too much because it's so controversial.
Yes.
But people are always shocked, you know, that when I tell them the true history. And I'll line it all up for them. I'll line up every fucking event and be like,
the bombing of synagogues in the Middle East and in Europe to try and portray that, you know, the Jewish communities are in danger.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever I speak to the like elderly Palestinians, you know, in their like late 60s and 70s about what, you know, existed before such division came to be, they tell me how like their neighbors were Jewish, Christians, Muslim
for decades.
Yeah, and for centuries actually. And like they're just like whenever you think about like the situation between the German Nazi and the German Jew, even the stories that I've read, the bibliographies, the autobiographies that I read was like, my neighbor took care of my kids.
Yeah.
And so that concept exists in Palestine too. They lived amongst each other. And so there really needed to be a strategic psyop in order to get Jews to come into Israel.
Yeah.
And it does consist of making them feel like they are not safe.
That's right.
In the country they live in. And for many, they weren't safe. You know, for Germany, for example, in many locations, it's true, they were not safe.
Right.
But in many locations, it was a psyop done by the Zionists in
Yep,
order to
by the
get
same people.
by the same people. We call them Zionists, but the evildoers, in order to get them to come to the land of Palestine.
That's right.
And, repopulate it with the Jewish communities and kick out the Palestinian communities.
So we were we were discussing some of the falsification of history that is still taught around the world for the most part. I'm not sure anyone's actually teaching what really happened, or at least what's important about what happened.
Well, I feel like anyone that is attempting to reveal the truth about it, like Elon Pape, Garber Mate, and who are both, their ancestors or survivors of the Holocaust. Right. I feel like they're just so silenced.
Yeah.
So, anyone that tries to speak the truth ends up in one way or another getting defamed or silenced or.
Or they get labeled somehow they're self-hating.
Self-hating.
The more evolved they are, the more self-hating they somehow are,
Right. As I continue to speak the truth, you can imagine like a stolen valor, a disgrace to the uniform, a traitor to the country. And, and I still wear my American flag here because I don't want them to like steal that. Like they take everything else. And I really feel like I wear this flag still to this day because it represents the people that are inside these borders. And that's ultimately,
that's right,
who I stand for and with is the people. It's the single mother having to work 2 jobs. It's the teacher who I donate an Amazon wish list to because, she has to buy her own school supplies for school. It's the mine worker in West Virginia that doesn't see daylight because he works 7 days a week, 12-hour days.
That's right.
Those are the people that stand behind this flag and that this flag actually represents. So I feel like it's the most patriotic thing to do what I'm doing, honestly.
It is. I agree. It's huge. Like I want to play this video, because we're talking about government. We're talking about how things continue to be problematic for innocent children in places like Gaza, and how Americans can somehow be, I don't know, given an obstacle course of to mentally navigate about why it's okay for them to use our money to send bombs and weapons nonstop to Israel, for them to literally obliterate an entire swath of population of people, their land, and then take it for themselves, and then pretend like it happened, like, I don't know, like a natural disaster came in,
Yep.
and we're just going to have to rebuild. No, that was the plan. That's why every time missiles were sent, bulldozers were sent in. That's not because they were concerned about tunnels or because they wanted to demolish the land, so there was nothing for them to come back to. That was always the plan.
Absolutely.
And they've used one war after the next to expand their borders. That's what they do. But I want to show you why we have a problem, and which I know you already know. But I want to play this for my audience, and I'll have my editor put it in. You approached this
Brian Mack.
Yeah.
Disrespected because I refuse to shake the hands of someone who is complicit in genocide, and he also refused to answer the question.
Hi, my name's Josephine Guilbeau. I'm a 17-year Army veteran. Are you an Israeli spy? Are you spying on the American government for Israel?
Why would you even ask that?
Because I'm a former intelligence officer. I have read documentation that points to you actually having allegiance to Israel and not America.
That's a very ridiculous question. My allegiance to the United States of America has been clear.
Has it?
I don't know, has it? Did you almost give your life for America?
Absolutely.
Because I almost gave my life
for
America.
So did I, 17 years in the Army. Why are you continuing to accept donations from Israeli citizens like the Falek family from Miami?
Israel is really a tremendous ally.
Israel is not our ally.
Israel's really tremendous. So this guy, Brian Mast, he wears his IDF uniform. So he wears a uniform of a foreign army into
Congress.
Congress.
As a congressman.
As a fucking congressman.
Imagine. Can you even imagine? I just want your audience to like take a second to think about what you just said. We have a congressman who volunteered for a foreign country's military and wore that uniform inside of the People's House of America, has taken thousands and thousands of dollars from Israeli citizens. He is a foreign agent for Israel. He is a foreign agent for another country. If Americans think that this man has our best interests over a foreign country at this point, I'm really questioning our education system, our critical thinking skills. It's like, hello, knock, knock. Israel has infiltrated the evil ones. That's what we'll call them. The evil ones have totally infiltrated our congressionals. We do not live in a democracy anymore. It is not a democracy. No. It hasn't been for quite some time, actually.
It was never meant to be a democracy, but
it was never meant to be a democracy.
That's
what they've told us. That's what they've led us to believe. You know, this person, this is going to be his legacy.
Yeah.
And in due time, the truth will surface while he's alive.
Yeah.
The truth will surface. And, you know, I honestly feel bad for his wife and kids because I know he has a few kids and he has a wife. And I just wonder what it's like to live inside of a home with someone that's like that is so evil and dark inside. I feel sorry for the children because I often wonder if he is going to teach his kids to be as dark as he is.
No, the question is, does he think he's dark? Does he know he's dark? Does he know that he's siding on the side of killers, you know, of people extinguishing life? And the answer to that is, in all likelihood, no. That's why
right.
he can shake your hand and look you in the eye. And
well, for the record, I did not shake
his
hand.
No, you didn't shake his hand, which offended him.
My body actually wouldn't. I thought in my head said shake his hand.
Yeah.
My arm would not do it.
Good for your arm. Yeah.
I swear to God, I was like stuck. I was like, oh, my body does not want to touch that person.
Yeah.
You're right. He probably doesn't even realize the depth of darkness that exists inside of his soul.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm an empathetic person, and I often wonder if that circles back to the fact that he lost half of his body.
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder if that has affected him psychologically to put all these sort of like humane guards up against seeing humanity, because otherwise he would have to do some internal healing to the reality of why he lost his legs.
Yeah. And who he lost it for.
And who he lost it for. What he lost it for.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Because it's very hard. As hard as it's been for me to wake up to the reality of things I've participated in, I imagine that someone who's lost half their body would have a very difficult time waking up to the reality that he sacrificed himself for someone who literally doesn't care about him or his kids.
Shit, you know.
Couldn't care less.
Just food for fodder. Just
That's right.
Literally kindling to burn. There's no, you know, that's all we are to them. And governments are used the same, you know, for their armies, for their ability to do what they can't do by themselves, which is why they have, you know, nobody has created, particularly here in America, where you know, they've managed to skirt regulations and laws. I mean, so the amount, first of all, when you become sponsored by AIPAC, you have to take a vow. You have to swear an oath, okay? That is extremely problematic. Your oath is to the Constitution. Your oath is to the people who you have sworn to serve. If you're also swearing an oath to a foreign country, to be loyal to that foreign country, and then you're given and assigned a handler to make sure that you follow through or you stop getting the money. And if you go against Israel, they will fund an opponent and try and get your ass out of there.
Oh, they have tons of blackmail.
And or worst case scenario, they will fucking blackmail you. They will
blackmail. They have the blackmail.
Yeah.
For almost all of these congressionals and senators, they have the blackmail. And for about a year, Representative Nancy Mace, a congresswoman from South Carolina, I have been communicating to her social media accounts, messaging directly evidence of the genocide inside of Gaza. And I have a screenshot a video that I took of all the messages and videos that I have sent to her office to make sure that in the future, when she claims she didn't know, because she will be put to the test of saying, did you know or not that you were complicit in these war crimes? She will not be able to claim that because I will have the evidence that shows that she was given the Amnesty International information, the Human Rights Watch information, Save the Children, the United Nations. She will have all of that. But what recently surfaced about her that she came forward and admitted is that there is video footage of her being assaulted by a male that she claims was her fiance at the time. And it's interesting that she's coming to surface with this now. And what I think is happening is this was the blackmail that they had against her. Yeah. So then she took a trip this last week to Israel to visit the kibbutz that the Hannibal Directive basically slaughtered these people. There's a video going around of the mother and the two children that were the Israeli captives of the Hamas fighters trying to get them out of the area as quickly as possible because they knew that the Israeli planes were coming and were going to kill them. And so in this video, you can see they're trying hastily to get out of that area so that they wouldn't murder these children. And so she went and visited this area. And so surely now she even saw with her own eyes that the Hannibal Directive was carried out because you can't do that amount of damage. They just don't have, Hamas just didn't have the capabilities to do that amount of damage. That was an Apache owned and operated by the IDF. The evidence is clear. They did this. But that reality that exists for her, where this blackmail exists for most congressmen and senators. Yeah. And you really have to be willing to put your life on the line. Yeah. Sort of like when you take an oath to protect and serve your country as when you join the military. Right. You really have to take that all the way to a point where you are willing to sacrifice your life.
And not many people are.
And be murdered by
or have your career ruined.
Or have your career ruined.
Have your reputation destroyed.
Yes.
Because the United States and Israel are fucking masters at this. They've got it down to a sick art. They've been doing it across the world to get what they want. For hundreds of
years, they've been doing this, so they are very smart.
I'm doing a special right now. I'm knee deep in research about Bill Clinton and the Bush family and the Clinton family. Essentially, the Bush family goes back much farther. But I'm listening to a former pilot, CIA. Every kind of agent imaginable. And he's talking about how, how they get away with it, and all the different places he was sent around the world and what they would do to get what they wanted. And literally, they would, some of the most horrific and terrible things. One of the things that I can tell you that was actually on the less sadistic side, was they went down. It wasn't Noriega because they killed Noriega. It was a dictator called Ortega, who they said, listen, either have democratic elections because this is what the public. We need to have this in order to justify what we're doing. So you got to have the elections. And he was like, no. And he said, you have 2 weeks or we're going to kill. It was his, the person he was closest with. It was his brother-in-law. And they were like, you could say goodbye to him. You won't be able to protect him. You can put your entire armed forces around him and he will not be here. You have 2 weeks. That's what he did. He he put the armed forces around him and he tried to hold out. And they fucking killed him with missile fire. Next week, he held the elections. You know what I'm saying? Like what they do to get what they want is unconscionable.
Yes.
It's and the Mossad is part and parcel and has been, you know, every step of the way since 1947. Mossad agents. This guy is a, you know, former DEA, former CIA. You know, was a pilot, was a hitman, took assignments from George Herbert Walker Bush, and he's talking about, you know, always. And there was a Mossad agent, you know, and this dictator had a Mossad agent by his side all the time, actually, you know, helping to run the drugs into America, you know. And
I love that the president of Mexico, the female, recently had that conversation. And like we were talking about earlier, when you say just like pique curiosity and then you'll find the truth.
Yeah.
And in her statement that she that went totally viral, she says, you know, how are the cartel members getting U.S. weapons?
yeah,
How are the drugs that are crossing the borders getting distributed throughout the country? She asked these questions because, you know, so blindly Americans take face value what our corrupt systems are telling them, what our corrupt media tells them, instead of asking the questions about the bigger picture.
yeah.
And how, you know, once you just ask that question, you realize the involvement of our government inside of the death, the horrific fentanyl deaths that are happening. You know, my husband's aunt, her husband died of fentanyl, actually, overdose. And so it was something that I definitely like thought deeply about. And yeah, the distribution of these drugs that are crossing are all coordinated with the institutions of our government. And
they always have been.
And it always has been. And this is just a part of their strategy to keep the American people suffering in survival, if you will, and also to keep the ones at bay that are coming to the realization. You know, it's no surprise that 22 veterans a day on average unalive themselves. And why is that? Because the moment that they realize the truth about what's going on, the pain is so great that they rather, you know, remove themselves from this time and space instead of having to live with it. And that goes back to Brian Mass, because if he looked inside of himself and saw the truth, it would be an immense amount of pain that he would have to live with. But, you know,
It's much easier to take money from AIPAC and do what the fuck you're told.
and live this like luxury life,
and
right?
be a hero and
Yes.
be fucking, you know, live the fantasy.
Well, the beautiful thing of it all, though, I mean, we talk about the genocide in Gaza. That's horrible. We talk about the amount of corruption that exists by the evil ones throughout our planet, really. But the most beautiful thing has happened, you know, thanks to the Palestinians, really. What they have done, the sacrifice that they have made in order to show the world the amount of evil that exists, has truly wakened people up by the masses. We're talking about millions and millions of people have come to the realization that truth will never fit back in a box. Because you talk about one generation from now, how that is going to double that number. I have 4 children. I'm one person that has come to the reality and awakening. Now I have 4 children that I'm going to teach the truth to. So the reality is it may take a generation or 2
or 5,
or 5, whatever it may be, for the world to continue to wake up. But the truth is that it's happening on mass scale right now. That all of our consciousnesses are rising, and it's only a matter of time before the evil either has to change their they're going to change their tactics. They're going to try new things. They're probably the next thing they're going to try is using the technology that was just revealed actually at a hearing in front of the senators, where there are transmittable frequencies that can control the way someone thinks. And so they're going to have to start even trying to do that from our towers in order to try and control us, because through our phones, they'll transmit it to try and continue this brainwashing. But
it's ongoing. It's been going on since MK Ultra. I'm going to send you a podcast. You can listen to it on your way home. It's going to blow your fucking mind. Like, and then you're going to listen to it again, and it's going to blow your mind again. It's going to be the fastest 3.5-hour podcast you've ever listened to. I promise you. But you'll learn all about blue screen technology. And the podcast I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen, is, of course, with Dr. Jack Kruse and Danny Jones' podcast. He's a champion of decentralized medicine. He was a neurosurgeon, a brilliant brain surgeon, operated on 10,000 brains. Very intelligent. Obviously, working in the medical establishment, you can't say too much. So he finally retired last year, and he has been speaking out about everything he knows since.
Oh, I wonder if I should connect him with the Doctors Against Genocide team. I think it's 20,000 doctors that have come together to speak out against these, not only the atrocities in Gaza, but just the atrocities that are committed by mankind, like generally in this time and space that we live. But yeah, I think that there's something beautiful to take out of all the suffering that we're witnessing, and it's the reality that there's this fork in the road that has been formed by the Palestinian cause and the suffering of these children. And what will come of it will be, really for the existence of our species as human beings will be something beautiful to see. Maybe we'll see it in our lifetime. Maybe we won't. But the reality is the ripple effect of the awakening that they have opened up for human beings is important.
And it's important for people to realize, step back from, the live streaming fucking genocide that we've been witnessing, and remember that it is only through that kind of darkness that we come to the light. The greater the darkness, the stronger the light is going to end up being. That's the nature of this planet that we live on. That's why we're here, and so the fact that from this happening, you have more people realizing how much they've been lied to about what actually happened in the last 100 years.
Or plus.
But at least starting in 1900, that's huge. No one was like, I was just joking around and saying, like, Kanye was like just a few months too early to say what he said, because now you hear it all the time. People are making comments like Kanye made. I'm not justifying anything Kanye said or saying I necessarily agree with him, because he's making the same mistake that most people do. And this mistake is made because of the ruse. Do you understand? It's a trap.
Yes, it's absolutely. They want
that's
you to
the defense.
They want you to get defensive against being called anti-Semitic,
and they want you to to think
and
it's
Nazi,
the Jews.
And they want you. Yes, absolutely.
Because they know it's, first of all, they know it's not, and they know that then they can defer to the all the different protections they put in place for these people who they're using and manipulating as we speak. And they're victims here. The amount of victimization that they're taught is insane, and that's part of the problem, the indoctrination of them as a people, particularly in and around Israel. And then you have the Christian right backing that up.
I have a real concern as someone who was born and raised Catholic. I have a real concern about the Pope has been, he's growing older. He's been very outspoken against Israel for the past year, thank God.
Yeah, well, he finally spoke up. It took him long enough, but
it took him some time. I'm glad he did. There's a disconnect between the Catholics in Europe and the Catholics here, we'll say. But I do have a real concern about who's going to replace him and the language that's going to come out of the new Pope's mouth. But I also realize that if our new Pope is overwhelmingly in support of Israel, which they will attempt to put a Pope in that is overwhelmingly supportive of Israel, it will further divide the Christians. It'll further wake people up to the reality that exists. Sometimes I I hope for the best, but then also know that every moment and thing that happens is for a reason. And that if they put in a pope that is overwhelmingly supportive of Israel, it's going to further divide and wake up Christians. So maybe that's what's needed. I even thought about that with this presidency, with a Trump presidency. For the past 4 years, we watched so many people who identify as Democrats come to the realization that their party actually doesn't care about them. And I feel like the next 4 years, those who identify as Republicans are come to the realization that their party doesn't actually represent them.
I fucking hope so, yeah.
Yeah, so now we're going to have a large mass group of people, we the people, that are going to unite together and say, we understand now fully that our government actually isn't a democracy and doesn't represent us. And so sometimes, like you said earlier, it takes this level of suffering to exist in order for people to come to the truth. And I'm just really praying that people come to the truth in this next 4 years under this administration.
You know, there's a lot happening right now. And it can't happen overnight. And we got to take the positive with the negative. And I have to think that there is a plan, that there's a greater plan for this species, and that, if you want to put things in this dualistic nature, that it's good versus evil, when it's really not. I don't think it's ever good versus evil. I think that's a very human
Language.
projection, and it shows up in religion, and it shows because that's what people understand, that everything's a battle, then they want you to believe that. But the truth is that people like the Rothschilds think that they're saving the planet. They think they're the good guys, and that's because their loyalty and belief and indoctrination is service to self. Whatever, to any degree, everyone else is in service of me and as useful as they can be in helping me rule the fucking world as I was born to do. Because I was, that's of course why I was told to. That's why I have all this money. Yeah. How else would I have more money than every other person on the planet, every other establishment, government, institution? Of course I'm here to rule, and what they need to be taught is that the rest of us, well, we can be useful. Don't get attached because, you're in charge of, just like you would manage a herd of sheep, you're in charge of keeping them, busy and paying and distracted.
And in survival.
And that's, of course, the easiest way. Because if everyone woke the fuck up and realized how many there are of us and how few of them, then we could overrun them in a moment.
I think someone did the math. There's like 3,578.
Yeah.
Like oligarchs, families that not 3,000 families necessarily, but just like people that if they just snap your fingers, like disappeared, we would have just a completely different society and world and planet. And well, not completely different, but at the very least, we wouldn't have these, I call them the evildoers. I know
because they're the ones doing the orchestration.
The orchestration.
Things like October 7th.
Like the mass
they
genocides.
Could never happen without the direct blessing of these people.
Right. And also, look at what's happening in Sudan. Look at what's happening in Congo. Look at what's happening in America. 1 in 5 children go to bed hungry. How does 1 in 5 children in the greatest country in the world go to bed hungry?
Air quotes, yeah.
It's like unreal that American citizens have been so programmed, and it happens in school. You think back, if you really think back at all these different things that happen to us as American citizens, starting with the curriculum in school, starting with just the way you go to school, and like,
oh yeah,
like I remember,
look who has the school system, the Rockefellers.
I remember,
look who has the medical system,
right?
The
I
Rockefellers.
remember going to school sick, like very sick, and because if you didn't go to the doctor, you were punished.
Yeah.
So you can't in America still to this day, you can't be sick and like need to stay home. If you stay home, you need a doctor's note. So, and then of course that costs so much money, because if you miss so many days, the school can call CPS on you.
Yeah.
So like, for example, as a female, if you're having cramps, you don't need to go to the doctor with cramps, but also at the same time, you need to be resting in bed and taking care of your body. You're having a biological effect.
Same thing if you work in a corporation. You need a doctor's note. You can't just most
you can't
places
just
call
be
in
sick and be home. Otherwise, the government is going, the public school system is going to email you as a parent, call CPS on you. You know, you're a horrible parent for keeping your kids home. I got a letter in the mail and from the school, or an email. Your daughter missed X amount of hours, like 40 something hours, just highlighting. And I'm just thinking to myself, and then what was funny was the next day she called me because she was so sick, she was throwing up. And so I talked to the attendance office, and I said, wow, yesterday I got an email that my daughter missed too many days. Today you're calling me to come pick up my daughter.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I said, it's like win and lose. You can't, the structure is just so insane. There's nothing free here.
No.
There's nothing free about wanting to keep my teenage daughter home because she's not feeling well.
There's nothing free at all.
If the reality is I have to go to the doctor in order to do it, and then now that's going to cost me $200 and a copay and everything else, which is in it itself another like whole like week worth of conversation.
It's all a sham.
It's all a sham from the get-go. They're programming us under this like authority. It's all about authority and control. And then by the time you become an adult, when you do something like me, when you stand in front of these puppeted politicians and scream at them, people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
I have people in comments saying she needs a psych eval. I need a psych eval because I'm yelling at these people who are
for sending our fucking money
to genocide children.
Yeah.
And then people are like, "Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's crazy." And it's
she's
like,
an actor.
I'm an actor. I'm an actress.
I love
if
that
you
one.
will.
I'm like, listen, you fucking idiot. I was an actor for 20 fucking years. I can spot one a mile away. She's not an actor, okay?
I feel like I was an actress for 17 years in the military, doing the bidding of these institutions that aren't even like for the people. I was playing a role. They programmed me to play that role. And I feel like now that I'm escaping it, you know, and reaching my most authentic self, that it's like you start to laugh at the brainwashing that still exists a little bit, you know, but also you feel bad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I'm as an empathetic person, there's a lot inside of me that, you know, from the right to the left, however you identify, like I really do feel bad for these people that they're doing acrobats in their head to keep up with the brainwashing. They must be just so exhausted.
Well, they're exhausted from working 2 jobs and trying to fucking make enough money to not get thrown in jail or lose their homes. And that's all by design as well. You know, like the system in place is completely fucked, for lack of a better word. Forgive my language.
So what's the solution?
Well, like
what we're doing now?
Well, this is one of the only, I think, solutions is to permeate the ideas of solutions in the consciousness of the people. You know what I mean? Like, because that's how ideas spread. That's how awareness spreads. Like, and it's ignorance is and deception is why we're complacently in this mess. And their methods of keeping that prominent have only advanced. You know, the blue screen technology, you know, that was a DARPA patent given to Google and Apple and all of them because it's a backdoor into mind control. And they're just perfecting what they can do remotely, wirelessly, with light alone, which is why every fucking light since Obama passed the law is an LED pulsating light. You can't see it, but if you had the right filter, you could see it's pulsing all the time, pulsing, just like a fucking hypnotist. You know what I'm saying? Like, Trump just passed a law that said incandescent bulb production can go back into effect, which is amazing because that doesn't have the LED, which can be terrible and used for mind control.
I'm surprised that the administration isn't also pushing forward the mind control agenda. Why are they reeling it back in a little bit?
Well, all they did was state that the production of incandescent lights that heat up the old-fashioned way, can, because Obama outlawed them under a green, a green law, and those are the only lights that, for years those lights don't have ill effects on biology like LEDs do. But LEDs that's the light that they also have learned to program people.
So what you're saying is they might actually care about us a little bit?
Well, no, Trump cares about economy and money.
The economy and money.
And producing more things in America is part of his forte. So I don't know if it's that. I know that Bobby Kennedy is aware of the blue screen, weaponization of the blue screen, and I shouldn't say its origins is in mind control. That's why every screen, every light, because when they get really fucking good at it, like right now, it's just working on our dopamine. It's why people are so apathetic, and complacent is in part due to this technology. But they're trying to get to a point where, at least with a certain percentage of the population, when they begin to program the light, they can elicit the behaviors that they want. And that's what's fucking scary. And that's why people need to become aware of how dangerous this technology is, besides the fact that it runs roughshod over your dopamine centers and all that jazz. But let's take the conversation farther out, my friend. I mean, we've been pretty farther out with some of the spiritual discussions we've had, but we got into some interesting topics last night. And before we part ways, I'm gonna give you a bunch of references to take home with you. But let's leave the hellscape of the Middle East alone right now, and let's talk about something maybe a little higher up in the sky. What do you think?
Let's do it.
So tell me, have you ever seen a UFO? Have you ever been taken on board a ship, or what do you believe that they exist? And do you what is your understanding of this disclosure and congressional hearings where they're bringing whistleblowers out, and are the whistleblowers actors? Are they liars? If they are, what's the end game? What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, well, everything that our government does at this point, I question.
Good, you should.
What is the strategy? Why are they doing this? What is the strategy? At the beginning of every administration, for some reason, they plant these mustard seeds inside of the American society about UFOs. It's it's like a little bit of a distraction so that they don't see moving parts everywhere else, right? Because just release it. Why do you tell us you're going to release it every administration, and then it fizzles out over time, right? It's just breadcrumbs that they're trying to give people to distract people. So if I'm being honest, the conversations that are happening from the whistleblowers, I don't know. They're probably planted.
That's what most people think.
I think they're planted. I found out how briefings work and how hearings work. For example, what's going on in the Middle East, they refuse to do something called a hearing. They will only accept briefings. A good friend of mine, Josh Paul, former State Department official, was allowed to do a briefing, not a hearing. Why? Because the hearings don't go on record. So they will not allow someone to say something that will go on record inside of our legislative branch unless they know for sure what they're about to say and they agree with it. So they'll have all these briefings and that's fine. But at the end of the day, there's no archive of it. Technology wise, yes, but as actual record where they're forced. Yes. And they're forced to have to do something about it because now it's on the record. Now you as a senator and congressman are going to be forced to follow any laws in place according to what these testimonies were brought forward.
So that's what makes you doubt the whistleblower testimony that's been coming out because it's coming out in a congressional hearing. You know damn well that they have an idea of what is going to be said, and they would only allow it if
it helps their strategy
Right.
to plant like all these breadcrumbs for us to whatever. But now to take that part out of this conversation, because this conversation doesn't deserve the government to be a part of it. I mean, I don't know. You know, I have a feeling inside that I always have had. 7 years old. I was 7 years old when I got for the first time, I had this feeling like something else was out there. And as someone who was born and raised Catholic, I used the language of Catholicism to define it, like a divine connection, a spiritual connection, God, Jesus. You know, those are the words that I've learned how to describe this. And now in my research and awakening journey, I've learned there are so many words to describe God. You talk about Yahweh, you know, the Anunnaki. There are so many words that we use. The creative mystery has been my favorite word. That's something the indigenous people in Northern America used. The creative mystery, the creator, because that's ultimately what he was. He created us. He created this life we're living. And it's a mystery. It's not something that we maybe will ever figure out, right? We're working towards it. But do I feel like I've been, you know, like taken by a UFO? Maybe not extraterrestrial or God, maybe not my body physically, but I definitely feel like I dream in color and I dream in visions. Not very many people know, but spring of 2023, I started having visions and dreams about the genocide in Gaza. Wow. And so I started handing out Bibles in my community. I talked to my priests about it. I talked to my family about it. It was giving me such anxiety because I couldn't figure out when this was going to happen, why I was dreaming about this. And it was so dark because, you know, it's such a level of darkness to witness these children being slaughtered this way. So, you know, what does that have to do with God or, you know, extraterrestrials? You know, maybe there's a connection there.
There is.
I believe
there is.
Yeah, where I wasn't necessarily like taken to some UFO, you know, other galaxy, but perhaps I was just given some sort of guide or vision into what was happening to prepare so that my body and mind could be prepared for it. Yeah. And so, yeah, I believe those things happen for sure. I think it's always happening. Subconsciously, we're always being given.
And in dreams is really the primary way I believe that these entities, the benevolent, both the benevolent and some of the less benevolent ones, can try and work with or influence a human being. It's a natural state, and I think that, you know, they're sent here by the Creator, and they're doing a service. You know, many of them have direct ties to this race because some of their DNA was used to create us, and so they're responsible, just like we are for our children.
Absolutely.
And so you have a lot of oversight going on. You know, I just came from a conference where I learned that twice in our history, they pressed the button and tried to wage nuclear war twice, and twice, very mysteriously, the electronics malfunctioned, saving the world from complete nuclear annihilation. Once in Russia and once on our part. Now, there are people who will say, "Oh, well, you know, that's divine intervention."
Perhaps.
And there are a lot of people who state that, divine intervention through celestial beings here trying to keep the monkeys from fucking blowing themselves up.
Yes.
And, you know, I have reports of like, you know, America tries to do things really, really intelligent, like, let's detonate a nuke on the dark side of the moon and see what happens. Good idea. Set it up.
Yes.
Launch.
Well, you know what they're doing right now? There's a 10-year contract that just was signed with a defense contractor. What is it? Northrop Grumman. where they're going to put a rail system on the moon.
There's already a rail system on the moon.
This contract, that perhaps there is, but they're to have nuclear access to Earth.
Oh God.
From the moon.
They'll never get away with it. The same reason why every attempt. First of all, this is true. This was an actual mission that they tried to launch, and it never went off. But there are people who report on more than one occasion seeing, so the missile was launched, the warhead was on its way up, and the saucer showed up here, shined a light on it. All of a sudden was here, shined a light on it. All of a sudden was here, shined a light on it. And the thing went inert and tumbled to the ground. And they were like, what the fuck? And everyone's like, what do you think burns the American government up more than that? An anonymous perpetrator taking, a couple $100 million worth of equipment right off the board with no effort whatsoever and no consequence whatsoever. Of course they're a threat to national security. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course they are. They can hit the lights.
Yes.
And they've done it, that's why their presence over nuclear sites are so prominent, and so often, not just here, but in Russia, in China, and that's for a reason. I really think that I was started to tell you last night, they're doing their best to keep us, from annihilation. I don't know,
extincting ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't know how far they're allowed to go. I do believe there's been intervention.
Absolutely. I often wonder, at what point are they going to give up on us?
Yeah.
Is there ever going to come a point where they will say,
would you give up on any of your children?
Absolutely not.
No. So
it worries me though, because look at the floods.
Well,
it worries me that they will believe that in order for us to truly start over as a species, because we've just ruined this planet to the degree that we've ruined it, that we'll need a do-over.
Yeah.
I worry about that.
Well, I'm not going to say that it's out of the realm of possibility, because obviously we've already had more than one do-over, but I also believe that, many of the souls that were there then are here now, and so, yeah, the do-over is physical, but it's not for the spirit. The spirit has an endless amount of do-overs anyway, and whether he or she or it decides to, evolve closer to source in this life, on this planet or the next, that is going to be up to that soul and its family of counsels and guides and spirits and, higher mission. And I think that each of us has one, and each of us has lived more times than we'll ever be able to truly imagine while we're alive in a physical body, but every single time, I think it's an opportunity, because the consciousness of the planet is raising, right? And
that gives me hope. That's the
that's
part that gives
right?
me hope, because I feel like the goal of our species is to evolve our consciousness.
Yeah.
And so that does give me hope. One thing I always think about, and I try to say to people about the creation of life as a woman who has 4 children, my body and brain knows how and when to create a baby inside of my stomach that I have no access to. This is hidden knowledge inside of my own body that I don't have access to know when my brain sends messages to my body to use the food that I am taking
and create
a kidney, or create a heart, or create eyeballs.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. And when you can think about it from that small concept, it's not small, it's great. But when you think about it as a human being from that concept, that we can't even access our own knowledge and wisdom that our body is doing, imagine what else we cannot access.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I agree.
And so it does give me hope, because the fact that I even just said that to you gives me hope that human beings like myself are thinking about these things
more than ever. Yeah.
more than ever. And it really, I don't want to give all the credit to the Palestinians, but it really boils down to this timeline,
Yeah.
and where we are in this moment of our evolution. That this story is going to be a great story that will be told about what happened to those children.
Yeah.
About the pain and suffering that those children are enduring now for the greater good of our planet.
Yeah.
Because
It has to be.
It has to be. The hope is coming from.
Yeah. And the truth is coming from
The
it as well.
truth is, yes, the truth is coming from this horrible suffering situation, and it's evolving us. It really is.
I agree. And that's the only way that you can look at it and still sleep and want to wake up in the morning. I agree. And everything happens for a reason. You know, from the greatest traumas that I've experienced in my life, the darkest things that I was subjected to have become the greatest source of light for me. And I look out at the planet and I see this reflecting, you know, in all, you know, some of the most incredible stories of showing what's possible have come from the darkest places. You know, I'm going to have Anita Morjani on my podcast in a few months, and she was dead, like literally. She had a near-death experience, but she was literally in a coma, body riddled with cancer. She had over 99 tumors. All that was left of her was the tumors, and she was in a coma. And you know, she remembers, she tells the story, but she talks about what happened, you know, like, so she was out of her body. She was looking down at her body, and her fiance, who was by her bedside, I think it was her fiance, it might have been her boyfriend at the time. He's married to her now. He's coming too. And then she was at the same time, she was in the office with her parents. Her parents were being, you know, told by the doctors to say their goodbyes, that this is really.
Sounds like astral projection.
And her consciousness was in two places. And then, you know, she was raised, I think, in Hong Kong but an Indian family, and it was an arranged marriage, and she went AWOL, which is a huge, like, taboo. You cannot
Cultural taboo.
You know, you bring shame to the family. You destroy two lives. It's like, so she never spoke to her dad after that. But her dad was the first one who greeted her when she went up. You know. Open arms, nothing but love.
I have some astral projection experience that I think.
Oh yeah, well you're in the right place to talk about it.
Am I? I don't know. It can become put a different level of target on your back to be able to. I actually, when I first started experiencing it, I actually spoke to an elder who was a Sikh. Mm-hmm. About it.
Okay.
And because I was like, what is going on? I don't know what's going on.
Right.
You know, and he is the one that told me, do not tell anybody you can do that.
Right.
And I was like, okay.
Especially in the government.
Especially in the government, right. So I'll probably hold off on
that's good.
Maybe some more off-record conversations. Anyway, I think every human being has the ability to do it if they are.
And they've done it. They just don't realize it.
Yes.
You know, like
absolutely.
The reason why somebody calls when you're thinking about them is because that's what's happening. You know, the consciousness is connected. It's not
absolutely.
A coincidence. How many fucking coincidences do you need to realize that there are none?
I know.
So tell everyone if you're following me on Instagram, then you're already following Josephine. But tell everyone where to keep up with you and your different sites so that they can
for sure.
keep track.
You know, I want to just like admit that I am new to social media.
Okay.
Before October 7th, I think I had like 5 pictures on Instagram. And I used Facebook for sharing like stuff from my family.
Of course.
I mean, I worked at NSA for years. You know, being on social media wasn't like my thing. But I do have an Instagram, Josephine.Guilbeau, where I share a lot of truth about what's happening in the Middle East, as this is one of the most pressing situations. I'm not going to leave out the reality of what's happening to Sudan and Congo.
Yeah,
because
but we're
it's
not.
awful there.
But correct me if I'm wrong. But we're not funding.
No, there are powers that are funding that as well, though.
But the American taxpayers.
But the American taxpayers, from what I understand, are not. But I also have a LinkedIn where I, am trying to reach that 20%, if you will, of the like professionals that exist inside of America. And that's Josie Guilbeau. I did keep my background and of what I've done in my career there. For those who question my credibility, you can go and see everything.
Or think you're an actor.
Or think I'm an actor. That's right. You can go and see everything I've done as far as like my career goes. And I just a reminder, I'm not like saying I'm proud of the things that I've done, but I just want to keep it there for people to understand that I'm coming from a place of knowing like how the inside of the beast works, right? From the government perspective. So so on LinkedIn, and then I have a TikTok that I just created a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Josie, I think it's Captain Josephine Guilbeau. So yeah.
Okay. If you follow me on Instagram, then you're probably already following Josephine. We collaborate almost daily on different posts, bringing awareness to this issue and fighting with people who refuse to acknowledge that it is an issue at all. Incredibly, they still exist out there.
Yeah, sometimes I have the energy to do it, go back and forth, and then sometimes I don't. And you have to find a line to say when you're ready to sort of not give up on a person. You don't want to ever give up on humanity and the human being, but just to say, okay, you have to accept it's not my job to wake that person up. I'm moving on.
No, you can plant seeds, but that's the best you can do. So for everyone listening, if you've enjoyed this podcast and you aren't currently subscribed, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and make sure that you're getting our weekly and daily downloads if you're on YouTube. And also, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming, Josephine. You guys will have to forgive if you're watching this, if I've been a little squirming around, is because I'm still dealing with some post-op surgery that I had on my derriere. And so sitting has been challenging, but thank you for bearing with me. And thank you for coming, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's been quite an interesting conversation, one of which I have not publicly really been a part of. So this will be, I guess this is my next level of this journey to start coming forward with some of these things that aren't on the in the public's eye, if you will.
Absolutely. I'm happy and I'm honored to be the podcast that
the one that does.
That's right. And we'll be in touch when we put these clips out and everything like that. We'll make sure we collaborate. But thank you again.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Wow.